I'm more upset with Greg Biffle. He's the most unprofessional little scaredy cat I've ever seen in my life. He wouldn't even fight me like a man after. He needs a freaking whooping. I'm going to give it to him.
Good day, race fans, and welcome to the Intentional Wreck podcast made by race fans for race fans, from the casuals to the lifelong gearheads. My name is Jeff, and I'm here with my fellow hosts Corey and Finn, and you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, and iHeartRadio under the name Intentional Wreck. You can also find us on Twitter under the handle at intwreckpod. That's at INTWRECKPOD. Soon to be coming to Instagram and TikTok. We want to apologize for some technical issues causing us not to have an episode loaded up last week. Finn was having some issues with his PC, and we just couldn't really get anything exported and loaded up. Sorry about that for anybody that was looking forward to that. We had a good one recorded, ready to go. It was sitting in the hopper ready, but unfortunately, technology got the best of us. But hopefully we've gotten that worked out for this episode, so we should be good to go just in time for the playoffs.
Right.
So I am super excited as we lead into that, and I know you guys are hyped too. So what do you guys think as we end the regular season? We've got now Truex locking in the regular season championship. We've Bubba locked in the last spot in the playoffs after this last win here at Daytona with the big wreck and all the fireworks, and my goodness, I hope Ryan Preece is okay and we get to see him back on the racetrack sometime soon. Plenty of that to go around, plenty to talk about. I wanted to get you guys' thoughts as we open things up here.
I'm just glad Preece is okay, man. That was one of the most terrifying things I've ever seen. That made the Busher wreck at Charlotte last year was bad. This is, in my 2 years of fanhood, the worst wreck I've ever seen. And honestly, the Blaney one was really bad too. It got kind of swept under the rug a little bit because of the visuals of the Preece wreck, but man, that Blaney hit was rough. And it just goes to show you, these cars are right on the edge, man. Anything can happen at any time, and these guys putting their lives on the line for this. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, the Blaney one would have been by far one of the worst wrecks of the year with how bad that was. And then, I mean, we were just shock and awe at how many times Preece flipped, and that was brutal. There aren't many times I've ever thought that we've seen somebody die on a racetrack. And to throw this one out there was a pretty horrific wreck yesterday in Moto 1000 GP that ended up with not one but two riders dying. So definitely a pretty brutal weekend for motorsports in terms of carnage. That being said, though, I definitely want to go ahead and take back a lot of my criticisms to super speedway racing, because that was a great personification of what it used to be. I mean, turning it on and going, I mean, I muted you guys during the race. Super speedway races are races where I'm not normally engaged. I was playing Madden with a buddy of mine, and I was just kind of keeping tabs on the race. And I looked over, and I stopped the game with my buddy. I was like, dude, this race is too good. I mean, 3 wide, all through the back end of stage 1. Stage 2 might have been the best super speedway racing I'd seen in a while. And it wasn't even obviously the wrecks occurred, but that's not what made it so interesting. That was, I mean, we need to, if we could find a way to put more on the line for these super speedway races, because that was the epitome of, it's there, you gotta win, figure it out, and go get it, because that was great racing.
You hit that, so that's the part I was going to say. The same thing is that you hit it right on the head. The big question at that point is, if you're going to do, when you do these super speedway races, how do you raise these stakes to make it so it is not 2 lanes for, for 2.5 stages, and then you get to your last 15 laps, and then you get a wreck, and then that's pretty much the end. Like, how do you bring that kind of excitement throughout super speedway racing now? Because
I have an idea.
That was fun.
I don't think it's a stakes thing. I think it's on TV to the casual viewer. Super speedway racing doesn't look that impressive. right? Because it's the intricacies of these little bump drafts and like pushing and when to push and is the guy in third close enough to the bumper, the guy in second, stuff that we find fascinating, right? But it doesn't click for casuals, man. Like, and it's weird, I think, but I don't know that raising the stakes is really gonna do it.
Well,
I don't
I
know that
mean,
that's it.
what I'm saying is it wasn't the bumping that made it so good. Like there was not a situation where they fanned out and they rode around. We've seen this a lot
Right.
with super speedway races where they fan out and they just kind of ride around for a bit and then they'll bunch up for stage wins. A second line will develop and they'll get going for the stage. This was 3 lanes for 10 to 15 cars each.
Yeah.
Just going. Like 3 lanes is crazy, and that's not something we've seen. We haven't been able to see that
Nope.
consistently in these cars, in the next gen cars, where they're really able to kind of do that. It seems like 1 lane dominates or bad air or whatever because of how aero dependent everything is. But that was for the first, and maybe because everybody was souped up. Again, there's no time to waste around it. This isn't a hopefully a survive till the end one. This is a survive, but you got to be up front to do it. And it was intense. There was a lot of change. I mean, Bowman was up there for a bit. Ty Gibbs was looking real dominant, and so he got spun in that first wreck. I have a note for this. I call it the Briscoe mishap. Is that maybe the worst choke of the... I hate to do this because it's Briscoe, and I love Briscoe. I was so happy. Leading this race, everything worked out in his favor going into final pit stops. He leads the group that would eventually win and lead this race towards the end, right? To obviously there was a wreck between that, but out of the pit cycle, right? It's all about when did you pit, what group did you pit with, how quickly do they form up? That was the group that ended up staying up front after pit cycles, and he came in first and left like 8th. And all it was a gas and go. I don't know how they messed this one up. Now, he had to get maybe more fuel in there because he's been leading the whole time.
Right.
But
it's tricky
it was
too,
less
'cause
than
his team's
15 laps, dude.
really good. His team's been really good.
Yeah, that was,
So
but
it's like,
that's choke
it's
of the year.
difficult to like it sucks, right? But like they got the performance ultimately that they expected to get. I think it's hard to lead those races too. And I mean, it sucks, especially because when you have that first pit stall, man, you got to make it count. Like that's how Byron's been winning these races all year. Is just
Right.
abusing the first pit stall.
Right.
And Briscoe just couldn't make it happen. I mean, it's a weird spot for him to be in this year because having the first pit stall is like a pipe dream for him all year long.
Yeah,
So he probably just wasn't prepared.
It was
But
awful.
was that
I
not
think they just
emblematic of his year, though? That is pretty much a perfect representation of the way that
I mean,
Chase
kind
Briscoe's
of,
season's gone this year.
except
In that,
that it's very different because this was a close one. There haven't been many close
no,
ones.
I just meant it's kind of like you see a little bit of goodness, you see some bright, you see like something shining through the clouds, and you go and get there, and then all of a sudden monsoon comes right through. You know what I mean? It's like it's kind of been that way for a lot of.
At no point really did I expect him to win the race. Like that's just not something that I've come to expect, right?
Just,
for better or for worse, it sucks, but I just assumed he wasn't going to win, which it is.
I mean, it's hard to guess. Like this isn't a track where it's like, oh, just being up front is a win. Like like even Harvick, who came out in front of that pack, did not win the race.
That race was the quietest that Corey has been during a race while we've been watching this year. Hands down.
25 laps
because we'd be like, is Corey still there?
covered.
Is he still in the chat? And this man was on his edge of his seat, pins and needles, the entire time Briscoe was out front, not saying a word.
Right.
I got one thing to add here that I don't see you have on our little recap. This may be a hot take, and tell me if I'm wrong here, guys. Isn't it getting a little bit Chris Bell seems to be in the middle of a lot of nonsense lately. Like, am I just making that up? Because that whole big wreck was kind of Chris Bell's fault. Like the whole Blaney hit, like you can't push in the corner, man. I'm a casual iRacer and I know you can't push in the corner. What was he doing? And it's like, it's his teammate. He's pushing in a turn. They're up front. It was nowhere near the end of the race. I'm just like, and I like Chris Bell. I think he's good for the sport. He's just like your kind of unassuming young guy, but like it just seems like he keeps getting like in the middle of these wrecks or like incidents, and he's constantly getting damaged. He's constantly just involved. And I don't know if
Right.
that's kind of how I feel about Eric Jones. And like, I don't want to put Bell in the Eric Jones category, but like, it's just something that I kind of can't shake as I'm walking around thinking about the race today. Like, so many of those guys had their races ruined by Chris Bell on Sunday or
Right.
Saturday night.
Well, here's the thing. I'll throw this. There's Reddick, there's Larson, and there's Bell. These are our current 3 NASCAR guys that are dirt track prodigies, right? For the most part.
Right.
They're all very well known. And they are very, very good at those mile and a halves because that's where that can shine. Where their aggressiveness and ability to sit up and get the job done can get them the speed that they're looking for. That being said, there is a way to be aggressive on super speedway racing, but it is not the same as that. It isn't throw your nose into everything, make it stick,
Right.
wheelman the car, right? So the guys that are traditionally good at super speedway races aren't really the guys that you see. Now, there's obviously overlap because if you had the speed to win those, like Denny Hamlin obviously can win a mile and a half. But Denny is known as one of the best super speedway racers of the modern era of NASCAR, but he's not throwing his nose. In fact, Denny's more known for when this race starts, he just backs up and chills and bides his time.
Back and out. He did it during this race. He specifically told his pit crew at one point, like, Gabe Hart came on the radio and was kind of like, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I gotta bail, I gotta bail, I gotta bail," and drops way to the back of the pack because he saw that 4 wide mess that was happening in the center there for about 2 or 3 rows. He knew something was going on.
Right. So that's what I think the problem is, because Larson is not a good super speedway racer. I don't think Larson has any super speedway wins at all. Now that I'm thinking about it, because and neither does Reddick, obviously, and how Reddick has been racing as long. But I think part of that reason is they don't quite got it. Whereas a guy like Elliott has a very good feel for how to be aggressive. Keselowski has a very good feel for how and when to be aggressive at these races, and that's no shocker. That's why we see those guys at the front in the end versus why we see the 20 and the 5 and those guys with damage throughout those races. Just having speed at these tracks and being one of the best wheelmen in the sport, that's what makes these tracks unique. And I'm the notorious super speedway hater of the pod. I don't hate them. I just wish they were more like what we saw on Saturday night, because that was very, very fun. That's what I remember watching back in the day.
This made the 500 look like an absolute snooze fest.
Yeah, exactly. Go back to the 500, and we were like explaining to the people at the party, like, hey, this can happen sometimes. Yeah. Whereas this was like just chaos from start to finish. Like, everybody needed to get their position. So, I mean, my only thing I could think of is there's 4 super speedway races before the finale. If the 4 super speedway winners get to go to the championship 4. That's the only way to put everything out there. You win one of those, you're in the playoffs, and then there's the 1-pointer, and then it's a 5 race. Nah, obviously that would be lame, but that was very interesting. So Chris Buescher wins the race. Ford has won 4 of the last 5 races. Fun fact, there's more Fords in the playoffs than any other manufacturer.
You're joking.
I saw this. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Fords. That's Harvick, McDowell, Blaney, Logano, Keselowski, and Chris Buescher. There are
You're right.
2, 3, 4.
No, there's 6.
5.
Oh wait, no.
There's 5 bow ties, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's 5, and then 6 Fords.
Bananas, dude.
So we've been talking all year about Ford struggling, yet they've got the most representation in the playoffs, and they've won 4 of the last 5. Now, is that Chris Buescher going crazy and winning 3 races? Because out of the 4 out of the 5,
and McDowell,
right?
McDowell,
or are the Fords something that you fear right now? Let's look at the names here: Buescher, Keselowski, Logano, Blaney, McDowell, and Harvick. Are we fearing these guys? Are they the favorites here? I mean, obviously we'll get to the big playoff talk in a little bit, but that's just something that was up on the Twitter world today. I was not expecting that. I mean, Buescher's red hot.
I'm saying, if you're not fearing RFK, what are you doing?
I don't know.
You're not paying attention. You're not paying attention.
Chris Buescher's got figured out.
Right, yes.
Because that's not only is that 3 tracks, that's 3 separate kinds of tracks.
If
that
I'm
means
the
they've got
the
the
field,
speed in all
Yeah,
3
everywhere.
packages.
Yep.
Right
I'm not
now.
scared of McDowell, Harvick,
No.
Logano, and Blaney right now. But like,
Yeah.
the RFK guys,
What the
they could both of those guys could end up in the Final Four, and it wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah. It's crazy. Buscher's 1 stage win on the year.
Yeah.
Like just the out of nowhere dominance. If he were to win, I mean that would add more to the silly season. But no, I just kind of keeping on Daytona though. Obviously, he won. Keselowski looked crazy up there. Big reason he pushed him. Bubba found his way in the playoffs, thankfully, because he was.
By the way, called it.
Called it. He was going to
nailed
point
the
it
prediction.
in.
Like 6 weeks, bro.
So,
no Elliott, Bubba in on points.
Elliott gets there, but Elliott doesn't have. He's there to have a chance, but they just don't have the push. Bowman's out. He can't get the job done despite being. He just not aggressive enough. He's not going to be the kind of guy that wins those kind of races. Simply not. That's not Alex
He
Bowman.
was up front. I mean, he raced well.
He doesn't. He's not. He doesn't have it in those tracks. That's unfortunate. He just doesn't have it. If Bowman's going to win, it's going to be a 1.5 mile or a short track where they nail the setup, and Bowman gets it done there. Like Bowman has aggressiveness. He doesn't have it on these kinds of tracks. So,
Yeah.
Is there anything else? Any saved rounds at Daytona? I mean. It was just all around pretty crazy. Did you guys see the video of Ryan Preece? Yeah,
Which one?
You just of the flip. Well, it doesn't skip the whole thing. He just kind of cuts black, and then you just hear his crew chief go, "It's bad, it's a bad one." I was just like,
that I didn't see. No, I mean we probably watched 50 different replays during that race, the actual accident itself, but I didn't get the I didn't get the audio with it. That's crazy.
I know we were pretty upset with NBC and their handling of the commercials.
Well, with the way that they did that, I was actually going to lead into Victory Lane with that as a subject.
Go ahead, and if you have anything else for Daytona, Corey.
I don't. I feel bad for Ty Gibbs. I think that's getting used up by your teammate when you're racing for the playoffs. That sucks. I think it's the end of a rock solid rookie year, regular season for Ty Gibbs.
Easily rookie of the year though.
Sucks.
Yeah.
Welcome to the league, rookie. And I'm saying this as a JGR fan. As someone who wants to see Ty get there. I wanted to see him get in. I would have loved to see 6 Camry guys get in here. You know what sucks is that me making that reference is not something that is going to get there because of the issues that we had with the pod. So nobody or any listeners really understands the Camry guy reference. But on the lost episode, as we'll refer to it now,
the lost episode,
Finn was specifically looking in and seeing, he was like, yeah, these guys are driving Camrys. He's like, who's scared of a guy driving a Camry? And I had to acknowledge, like, we had the potential.
So I brought my guns out this podcast.
He had to do it because he had to defend
real
himself.
Camaro guy.
Right, yeah, real big Chevy Camaro guy right here, about to start his new metal band. But no, I'll say this to Fred Durst's previous comments.
Only we can fly.
He kept saying, he was like, yeah, I mean, come on, it's a Camry, because Corey was saying he wanted to have Supers in, and I agree, Supers would be cool and get me more Toyotas, but nobody's scared of a guy driving a Camry, but we got 5 Camry guys driving into playoffs. I'm happy with that. But to that same point, for Ty, sorry, kid, welcome. You got plenty of bright years ahead of you. You will make your playoffs. Wouldn't shock me if he's up there in that middle of that pack next year. Fully have solidified his way and probably get a W next year. But I mean, in the last race of the year with, that much stuff on the line, there's really not a lot in line of teammates.
I would lay big money that Ty Gibbs gets a win next season, if not by the end of this season.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we could still see him win one of these
sniffing
races.
it. Yeah, he's figured it out. He's heading that direction for sure.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and as we get to the playoffs, Finn, I was going to say one thing. I think it might be, good to break down for some of our folks, especially if they're newer. When we break into some of the playoffs, maybe we try and break down a little bit of the Owners' Championship and some of the things that the folks that aren't in that top 16 might actually be racing for as well. Right. But as to not mess up our order here, I'll kick into Victory Lane. Feels good to be back in the back on the checkers here, and I'll make this somewhat quick. I had 2 small topics that I wanted to talk about. For one, I gotta give the thing is we're as much grief as we gave Fox for their broadcast this year. I have to give it back to NBC for a very specific aspect of the way that last night was ridiculous. Or last night, Saturday.
Saturday
What day
night.
is it?
Saturday
Sorry.
night.
The way things were ridiculous. You guys don't know you don't know if we record right after or when. So, regardless, like when you're watching the stream of the race, which we were, so we can watch together, Discord and stuff like that, there were full screen commercials throughout. And just to test, I flipped on the actual broadcast on the TV just to see what was going on, and they were side by side.
Yeah.
We need some consistency there. If you like,
Yeah.
And here's the thing: if that's the part that like is being frustrated, you're still doing far and away much better than your predecessors did earlier in the season.
Yeah.
But we got to have side by side on the stream, just in the same way that you're having it on the TV broadcast.
Right.
It's 2023. People are watching this race on their, through their browsers. They're watching it online. Like, come on, guys. This is through your streaming platform.
Yeah, that was not some sketchballer stream either. That was like NBC's website. Yeah.
Exactly. It's like if you're going to be moving, because that's the other thing is NBC is the one that is trying to push everything towards Peacock right now and put everything into that Peacock basket. So if that's the case, the stream needs to be at the same quality as what you're seeing on TV. The other thing that I'm going to throw into, and I will beat the hell out of this dead horse constantly. Again, motorsport games, they had been promising the one shining thing they could have been promising that could have happened this year. We were going to get an IndyCar game, which would have been the first IndyCar game to actually be released as a dedicated game for IndyCar since 2005. And it's not going to happen this year. And now that you lost your license, and everybody that's over at the top of your list has generally fumbled the bag at every opportunity, I firmly believe we're not going to get it in 2024. And even if we do, it's likely going to be dog shit. So to that, I will end my victory lane by saying, do better, NBC, and eat shit motorsports games.
Bro, just launch motorsport games into the sun.
Yes,
just like I don't get it.
Right.
The path, the blueprint for making quality sports games is so easy. It's been done so many times. The blueprint is there. Figure it out. It's ridiculous that they can't.
Yeah.
To add to your point there, Jeff.
No, not much to add. The games can explode. I mean, my newfound love for baseball is a direct result to not only how fun, but also how intuitive and realistic the MLB The Show game is, and bringing that to the Xbox platform. It's the best decision that San Diego Studios could have made for that. If NASCAR could just find, I mean, obviously iRacing is there, but that's not something that's locally accessible to people. And also people want a good offline experience, the ability to have their own career path, and that's something that iRacing doesn't offer. So,
well, and I'll also add to that regarding the IndyCar factor is that you can no longer race IndyCar in iRacing because the license punts it. That's why when you're racing on iRacing now, you use a different name for a car. Yeah, exactly. You're not actually running IndyCar licensed material anymore because that license is supposed to have been moved for motorsports games to make the IndyCar game that is nowhere to be found this year and potentially not next year. Right. So, anyway.
So
congratulations, Jeff. It was a hard month on top of victory lane. So I'm glad you got one there, buddy.
Yeah.
So
we can go ahead and check the points because you and I are neck and neck if I'm not leading you by the season anyway. So.
Yeah, I haven't even peeped those. In fact, I haven't even
season long.
Yeah,
I got you boys by 200 points season long.
As of last week, it was pretty close, bud.
Well,
pressure's
points
on.
Counts as pretty close.
Pressure's on. I'm just glad I won money this week on the pool.
Yeah.
Bowman.
R.I.P.
That doesn't happen much. So Bowman and Briscoe will not be a part of this conversation, unfortunately, but I figured we'll hop into a little playoff preview. So kind of talked a bit about the points. I'll go ahead and do a quick rundown. So tied for first place is going to be Willie B and Martin Truex Jr. Willie B had 5 wins, obviously. A real breakout season for him. 9 top 5s, 13 top 10s, and leads the entire league, if you will, in stage wins. So they both set up the top. Martin Truex Jr. was a regular season champ, but because of those playoff points that you get by winning stages throughout the year, that's going to put Willie B in the top. Another thing to keep in mind is playoff points transfer from round to round, right? So Willie B is not only going to be starting first in this round, but if he were to move on to the round of 8 or 12, after these next 3 races, those playoff points, when they reorder and reset, will be there for that as well. So that's the benefit of winning stages throughout the year. That's the incentive NASCAR gave. So just for some of the new fans there. Behind them, though, is going to be Denny Hamlin with 25 points. In third place. And then the red-hot Chris Buescher coming off of 3 wins in, 4 races? 3 wins in 5 races?
Yep, 3 wins in 5.
3 wins in 5 races. He came out of nowhere. He's 4th. He only has 1 stage win, though. But that's still, the wins are enough to get him up there. Kyle Busch and his 3 wins in the 8 car put him at 5. Then Larson. Then Mr. Bell. Ross Chastain, who got his win at what, Gateway it was? And then the first driver to make it in without a win, that's Brad Keselowski, will be 9th. 10th is Tyler Reddick after his COTA win. Logano won at Atlanta. Joey won the first Atlanta race. Then Ryan Blaney, who won the Coca-Cola 600. That feels weird to say. Ryan Blaney with a win. McDowell and his dominating day at Indy Road Course, right? Was it?
Yep.
That he won? Yep. And he struggled at Watkins Glen. Ricky Stenhouse, who won the first race of the year, then disappeared. He's in 14th. Kevin Harvick in 15th. And then rounding out the playoff is Bubba Wallace in the 23. Just missing the cut, Daniel Suarez in the 99. We said Briscoe was maybe the choke of the year. It was Daniel Suarez at Indy, the real choke of the year? Because that was probably their best chance. Ty Gibbs, Bowman, Elliott. And then after that, it's I'm not going to call them the undesirables, but the guys who really never had a chance. Allmendinger, Cindric, Almirola, Haley, LaJoy, Priest, Gilliland. It's crazy to me that Briscoe finishes outside the top 30. Yeah. But yeah, that's where we're sitting in the playoffs. Quick preview of the round of 16 coming up, right? Well, I feel like we'll talk about all of them, but what I want to really ask you guys, and I guess thought is, who do you see as hot and who do you see as really, really cold right now? And then what do they need to do to get in, if that makes sense? So that's the general consensus here. So going into the round of 16, we're going to have Darlington, Kansas, and then Bristol night race. This will be the first race at Bristol. That's on the asphalt, right? Because we had the dirt race that Bell won. Bell won the dirt race earlier in the year. Then we got the round of 12. That'll be Texas, Talladega, and the Roval. It's a little bit of a curveball, 3 different kinds of racetracks. Round of 8 is going to be Vegas, Homestead, and Martinsville. Another 3 separate kind of tracks. And of course, championship round will be Phoenix. So, Corey, I'll ask you first. Who is entering hot in your mind? Give me 2 drivers that are entering hot, and then what do they need to do, even though they're hot? You know how quickly things can go south, or.
Mine's easy. Buescher and Keselowski.
Really? So RFK as a whole.
Oh yeah, those guys. I mean, because they're finishing so close together constantly, like 1 and 2 at Daytona. That when one car is good, they're both good, and they're both really, really good lately. Keselowski doesn't have any wins, but if there's any guy on the circuit that doesn't have a win yet this season and could get one at any second, it's Brad Keselowski.
Right.
I mean, he could have very easily won on Saturday. Like, all he had to do was pass his teammate, and
right, and did the smart thing. Right, didn't get aggressive. Knows that if he wins, we're both in. Yeah. That's a true professional move. Looking at the round of 16, is there a circle that track the best RFK race that you can think of? Bristol, right? And I was thinking the same. Right, last year, I don't know if you guys recall, Brad Keselowski led a lot of that race.
Yeah.
And Buescher won it.
Buescher just won at Richmond.
And Buescher won the race last year at Bristol and looked dominant.
Yeah. And, it's Darlington, Kansas, Bristol. Like, I wouldn't probably flag either of those 2 to really crush it at Kansas, but I could see either of them winning either of the Darlington or Bristol races.
If they bring the speed.
Probably we're going to see a Toyota or William Byron annoyingly win at Darlington again, but yeah, I could see, dude. Give me those RFK cars, man. If I had to pick 2 guys right now, that's who it is.
Okay, yeah, I'm inclined to be with you with Buescher. I'm a little hesitant with Keselowski because of how far back he is. He really needs consistent finishes if he doesn't win. Whereas Buescher is the kind of guy who can kind of work his way through. And if this isn't fluke, 3 wins is not fluke in NASCAR, right? I even told y'all well before in the season, like when Byron was like winning, I was like, all right, two wins off a green right checker. Okay, I can call luck. But you win 3 races in a season, even if they were all based off of weird, wacky cautions, you're doing something right. It's very hard.
Yeah.
So, Jeff, I asked him who's entering the round of 16 hot. Who's entering cold for you?
So, to me, Christopher Bell is entering cold.
Yeah.
I just I feel like towards the last half of the season, he's been pretty cold. Just in general, it has me a little bit concerned because you have somebody who was looking really good there towards the beginning of the season and then cooled off as things started to move towards the middle and get through the dog days of the center of the season there. And I really want to see a strong showing from him, and he has the opportunity at Darlington. Toyotas generally run well at Darlington. I think he's going to have team help. I think there's going to be a lot of at that race in particular. I think we're going to see a lot of team groups. I think we're going to see a lot of team pit strategy, especially when you've got 5 of your team there. When you're and Toyota is the manufacturer out of the bunch that is used to that in having the smallest cluster out of everybody else. So I think that that's something that could contribute to potential success there, is that these are guys that are used to trying to find each other as friends on the track. And so I think that to really see him as a contender, I'd really like to see a strong showing from him at Darlington, because he hasn't been great towards the end of the season. And somebody else I think has just been pretty much ice cold here through most of the end would be Joey Logano. That's another person that I think, I mean, where's he been for most of the season? He's got 1 win. He's run halfway decent as far as getting his top 5s and top 10s. But at the same time, this has not been one of those seasons at all in which Logano has met the expectations that you tend to come to expect from him. And that also plays with Penske as well. We have not seen the kind of year out of Penske that we generally expect. So to take 2 guys out of here that I think are heading in here cold and really need to get a strong showing and get off the ground fast, to me, it's Christopher Bell and Joey Logano.
Yeah, I think you nailed that one. Those are 2 guys I had on my list. Very exclusively, Logano is a guy. Obviously, we've talked about the Ford struggles, and I highlighted earlier that they've been kind of hot, but I think that's really just RFK kind of figuring something out. Yeah. But yeah, Logano hasn't seemed to. I mean, even any of the Penske cars, right, have not really looked well at all. Again,
Cindric has been a non-factor all year.
Yeah, Cindric.
Nowhere to be found.
Yeah, I mean, Cindric's only firmly in the 2 because of his father. I can call that a nepotism ride up and down. He was supposed to be the road course ringer, essentially, for Penske, and the dude is just absolutely not around. I'm going to give you 1 of each for hot and cold for me that you guys didn't give. Entering hot, I'm going to go with Denny Hamlin. I think outside of, if he wasn't wrecked out of a race, I think his, average finish is, 3rd over the last little bit. I mean, it feels like anywhere he needs to be. I was very, very impressed with Denny Hamlin's qualifying at the road courses this year. I mentioned that in the Lost episode last week.
4 poles.
4 poles in what?
4 poles.
Right. They look at the Richmond race that we went to. Well, the one I went to with you guys, he was really, really solid. I can't remember exactly how it pegged off whenever you guys were there, and that abysmal experience. But no, I just think that right now, out of the Toyotas, I think Truex has kind of cooled a little bit. He isn't my who's cold, but in terms of right now, the best Toyota with the chance to win this thing, I think, is Denny Hamlin.
I think so too.
I really think that he's going to be interesting. I think he's going into this round of 16 having already won at one of these tracks. He did win at Kansas earlier this year. He
also runs Darlington very well.
Right, he's one of the the skilled vets at Darlington. I don't expect him to be much of a factor at Bristol, not his style of track really. But Kansas and Darlington, and then even further in, he's obviously really good at Talladega. He can win at Texas. He's going to be a factor at Vegas and Homestead. Of course, Denny can race like nobody's business at Martinsville. So all through these, I think if this is the year for a Toyota win, I I think it'll be Denny Hamlin getting his first championship. As for who is entering cold, I'm going to go with the former Toyota driver, now turned Chevy driver, Kyle Busch. So 3 wins on the year, but I don't see that he's, putting things together. I did a quick look at some of his finishes: 14th at Watkins Glen, 36th at the road course, 37th at Michigan, 21st at Pocono. He did finish third at Richmond, 36th at New Hampshire. And then, so ever since Atlanta, he's really been finishing out of the top 20 more often than he's finishing in the top 10. He was very, very solid in the middle of the year, but this isn't who had a really good year. This is who's entering the playoffs cold. We talked about momentum. The bow ties across the board aren't looking well. Another guy I had in that back pocket was Ross Chastain. This is a guy that's won a race, and then I haven't seen him at all. And
is Larson cold right now?
So
that one's tough
factor.
because I'm sitting here thinking, like, is Larson cold? Because I don't see it right now.
So here's the thing with Larson, and if you look at his season, the way, especially towards the end, like lukewarm at best with the last month or so in particular. But when you look at how his season shakes out by the numbers, it's not really what you really would think it would be.
No,
the guy's led third most laps out of anybody in the playoffs right now. The guy is far and above, like, let's see, he's got second most top 10s out of anybody in the entire playoff pool right now. He's up there with anybody as far as his top 5s are concerned. You wouldn't know. He's got the most top 5s out of anybody in the playoff standings right now. It is, you wouldn't realize that's the kind of season that he's having just by watching, and the way things have gone towards the end of the year, it seems to have gotten worse. So again, I think it's room temperature coffee.
So
for Kyle Larson going into the playoffs.
So if you're a non-Larson fan, right? If you don't give a shit about Kyle Larson, I wouldn't be stressed per se. He's definitely not the most dominant Chevy by any means right now entering the playoffs. And right now, again, it's looking at RFK and Denny and Truex are kind of the surefire guys to get through for Larson. But what I want to say is a couple things. One, this is going to be the first time that I can remember that the entire weight and attention of Hendrick Motorsports is going to be on 2 cars. Not 3, not 4. Everything is built around 2 cars right now. And that's a lot of fucking money. That's a lot of great engineers. This is Chad Knaus not stressing about anything but his 2 hottest drivers right now. Not physically speaking. Way more of a Chase Elliott guy myself. Also, shout out to humble William Byron. Somebody on Reddit posted a picture. He was in the stands at the Xfinity race, and he said, "Is this William Byron next to me?" And it was. William Byron was just sitting in the stands, casually, watching the race at the Xfinity race. And these guys are like, "This is William Byron." And then, he said that he was super chill, signed some things, and I don't know if at what point the mob were surrounding him, but like, it's crazy to me that he's literally leading NASCAR in wins, and he's virtually unrecognizable in the stands.
Yeah.
How many times do you think he's done that? That's the one that makes me think now.
Well, if he had a big hat on,
done that.
He was
big giant hat.
Right, but he was actually wearing a Raptor hat, the 24 Raptor hat.
You're kidding.
That's amazing.
He's wearing. Go look on Reddit. He's wearing the 24 Raptor hat, just sitting in the stands. With his little beard, little blonde beard action going on because he's 24 now or whatever the fuck age he is. So that's crazy to me that he,
Good for him.
Standing.
He
And granted,
could have wore his suit.
I will say this:
in previous years, he could have wore his entire getup, and people still wouldn't have.
Right. Well, for what it's worth, Xfinity races aren't exactly packed. So
right.
Especially
but that makes it worse, not better.
Well, no, because
it's easier to get recognized when there's less people.
I don't know. And a crowd that big, somebody will pick up on Willie B being out there.
You would think for sure.
But also, to my point, we are heading into tracks that Kyle Larson is really good at, especially Kansas and Texas, and he's really solid at.
He's going to win Homestead.
So Yeah,
If
for
he doesn't,
Larson,
I would
right.
bet a mortgage payment
Right.
on Homestead.
Right.
The
Larson situation is, can Larson will probably could steal Kansas, but I think with the full attention, and if you look at Larson, you mentioned all of his stats, he qualifies extremely well. Almost every week he's in the top 10, second round of qualifying, which is expected of a Hendrick car. I think his crew chief is going to do a great job at kind of calming him down and saying, hey, okay, let's reset here. We spent the last 2.5 months R&Ding, seeing where we can find speed on certain tracks, testing new things out, failing on setups, getting aggressive, whatever. Let's reel it in. We're going to use our best stuff now. All right, we've got NASCAR's best inventor and innovator in Chad Knaus. We've got the setups to boot. We got this thing figured out, and I think Kyle's got the skill level to quit. And again, you're right. If he can get to the round of 8, he's going to win Homestead or Vegas. That's almost written. That'll get him to the championship round. After that, it's all about can you win Phoenix, right? So if you're a Larson fan, I think you don't have anything to worry about. If you are not a Larson fan, I think if you can get him out before the round of 12, because last year he was out at Roval, right? Last year I don't think Larson made it to the round of 8, because he won Homestead and was not in the championship 4. He had already been knocked out. So that's interesting there. Another thing I want to point out, when we're looking at Kansas, the guy who won this race last year at Kansas in the 45, and that's Bubba Wallace. Bubba's had some speed. We've talked about him a lot. He hasn't been able to kind of put it there on the track for some reason. But this is a track that he's very confident in. If he can get himself a win, move forward in the playoffs, that'll be interesting.
That would turn some things upside down if Bubba can mess around and get a win at Kansas.
Right. I didn't get to add on. You mentioned earlier Gibbs getting a win. I think same deal with Buescher last year and Bubba last year is, I think now that the pressure of getting the win from a playoff standpoint is off, we're going to see, I'll say at least 3 new winners from this year. I think we see
10 races left. You're calling 3 new winners?
Yeah. I'm going to say, I think, let me pull this up. First of all, I mean, that obviously includes like Harvick, Bubba, Keselowski, right? Yeah. I think one of those guys could win, but like, I think Ty Gibbs can win a race. Obviously, I think Chase Elliott can win one of these races, especially Darlington. He won last year, right? No, Eric Jones won last year. I said that earlier.
Yes.
And I think that we could see one of Bowman or Suarez get a win. Hoping for my boy Todd Gilliland. I want to make a note here since I mentioned Eric Jones. Josh Berry, I again heard via a tweet or whatever. I heard that the 42 is the worst card he's ever driven. He's not driving the 42 this weekend. Carson Hocevar is driving the 42 this weekend. So it'll be interesting because if that, I mean, I'm very curious. I mean, obviously we know what's going on with Legacy Motor Club and the move to Toyota, but Carson will be driving in the Cup race this weekend. I'll be at the Xfinity race. Larson's racing, so that means it's going to be interesting.
Well, I mean,
in the Xfinity race,
might as well not go.
So no, I mean, so Lehua hasn't gotten a chance, and granted, you also haven't had an opportunity yet to see them at the high speeds, right? You've only gotten to see them at Richmond, Dover, and I want to take Lehua to that, and that's why I was okay. We got free tickets. Somebody at my mom's work they like their company sponsor, so they got tickets. So we're gonna go down and see the Xfinity race. So that'll be exciting. So, all right. So Darlington's first on the list, right? We'll have plenty of opportunities. So last year's winner, let's see. Eric Jones won last year. Did William Byron won the one this year? It was very hard to pass. How important is qualifying for you? I mean, obviously, I already said it, but like qualifying might be one of the most interesting things, knowing how hard it was to pass in that bottom lane at Darlington this year. Or do you think we see a complete change with it being playoffs now and these cars are geared up, juiced up? All the setups are pushed in there. Do we see some more passing, some more aggressiveness? What are your thoughts?
Yes. Yeah? And I'm going to say that so the other factor is when you get to the Southern 500, you're looking at a different strategy because you're looking at a longer race.
And a night
race.
You're
also, exactly. And you're looking at a race where you're going to see a track temperature change that's going to be severely different than what we saw beforehand. So I think that you start this race in the conditions in which they're starting this race are going to look a lot different. And I think that bottom lane is going to become a little more favorable than it was in the past. I mean, Darlington in general is very interesting in the way that that outside lane can really be a fast factor, especially considering the length of the track. You don't always get that with these, mile and a halves or close to it and stuff like that. Usually it's kind of that everybody's trying to, establish their position and then try and find their way to, use the inside to pass and stuff like that. I think that as we get to this race in particular, I think we're going to see a bit of a change with that. I think the inside lane is going to be a little more popular this year, and I think it's especially going to change as we get towards the end of the race.
I want to. Does anybody know what the weather's supposed to be like? Finn, you're supposed to be there.
Oh, it's going to rain, guys.
Fuck,
I
dude,
mean-
no shot. Hold on,
I'm looking it up now because, like, I think we noticed
That
as
will be
well.
my answer for any. If you ask that question before any race, I'm going to tell you it's going to rain.
We saw with the Daytona race being a night race, and this is Southern 500. It's a night race, right? So hopefully, what we see is it being a little cooler, a little grippier. Maybe these guys can get some passing going. But I mean, yeah, it's that Byron win earlier this year was a snoozer, bro. It was never close, and
Right.
I like. I love the oval racing. It's my, Darlington, not necessarily my prototypical sort of thing, but yeah, for Darlington Sunday, we're looking at 86 degrees
Right.
and sunny. So hopefully it could go either way, right? Because the heat tends to bring the chaos when it gets a little slick, and maybe these guys, and if they're really pushing it, I mean, last year Eric Jones won for whatever that's worth. He's a
Yeah, I
have
mean,
my-
he's for what it's worth. Eric Jones is really good at Darlington.
Yeah.
That's just something that he's got
he's
figured
also
out.
willing to put it on the edge.
Right. Right.
And that, like, we're at that point now where these guys are going to be sending it because
Right.
a win and you're through. Like that for those 16 guys, for Keselowski and for Harvick, some of those guys that don't have a win yet, they're going to be going, man. Like,
Right.
it's not going to be just let's line up and everybody follow William Byron while he has he shoots a commercial for the next 2.5
Right.
hours.
I mean, Kansas is the only race out of these three that's going to have ease of passing if you've got a better car. Bristol, a very hard track to pass that, not to mention you have to constantly deal with lap traffic. And that's a high lane track where it's hard to make the car stick on the bottom. I'm very curious, like Jeff mentioned, it's going to cool off to almost 70 degrees at night when, we're hitting the middle of the race. It's the 500 miler. It's going to be long. Cars are going to get tore up by the track and just by the hard race. And so I am excited.
More Darlington stripes will be
definitely some Darlington stripes
around for this one as opposed to earlier.
So, I mean, it's going to be fun. I definitely am excited. I think when we see these things turn up to that next level, that's when people really, really, again, my mind goes back to Chase Elliott at I can't remember if it was the walk. No, it was the IRP. It was the Indianapolis Road Course race, not IRP, but Indianapolis. When he was just kind of cruising behind, I was like, man, nobody can catch him. And then out of nowhere, he closes it. It seems like when they really need it, they can do it, which baffles me throughout the race. Is like, where was that? You literally had the speed to close down 2 full seconds in a lap. Where was that a lap ago, Chase? But it seems like now with these setups, it's going to be pretty trimmed out, and it'll be interesting. So, shall we do favorites for this one?
Yeah, let's do it.
So, Jeff, you won Victory Lane.
Yeah.
And who do you got
That's
here?
fun.
Who do you
So-
got here at Darlington?
So what I've got this year for this particular one, I'm going to take a little bit of a flyer that wouldn't ordinarily be a flyer in just about any other scenario. I am going to say that this is the year that Kyle Larson finally gets his Darlington win.
Okay.
And there's a few factors that are going to come into play with that. One of the things that I think is going to be, huge is I know for sure you mentioned Hendrick, dumping a lot into 2 cars as opposed to more. going into the playoffs, and that's one thing. We also know that Larson hasn't won there. We want to see, they're going to want to see him get his win at Darlington. On top of that, it's not just that Larson hasn't won at Darlington, it is Larson has come so close to winning at Darlington on more than one occasion.
Right.
You look back at 21 when he attempted what Chastain succeeded at Martinsville. He tried at Darlington a couple of years ago to get around Denny at one point. That he wants that. And also to that, Hendrick's that's another just, notch in the belt for Hendrick to want to try and sweep Darlington this year. That would be another huge factor for them. So I think that's going to be a big thing. I think it's going to be a big deal for them to try and push Kyle Larson over that finish line, and not to mention trying to get him up closer towards that point. So I think that the money and the energy is going towards trying to get Kyle Larson a win early, especially knowing his strength at Kansas. So my prediction on this one is I think it's going to be Kyle Larson, and I have a feeling that we've seen some close battles between him and Denny this year in general. I think Darlington is another one of those, but I think this is one in which Larson, regrettably for me, Larson actually gets it this time.
Right. What are you thinking there, Corey?
Well, I'm looking over some statistics here, and I'm looking at a guy who has 10 top fives and 15 straight top tens minus once when he got wrecked out at Darlington, and that is Kevin Harvick.
Mm-hmm.
These numbers that I'm looking at right now are insane. 2nd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 1st, 3rd, 1st, 4th, 4th, 9th, 2nd, 5th, 1st, 5th.
It's a driver's track, and he's one of the best.
That is bananas, dude. I just happened to think of it. I was thinking Keselowski. Nah, man, I'm taking Harvick. That's crazy. And to think that he doesn't have a win yet this year. He's low in the standings in the playoffs, and win could put him through. This is the 4 team has to have this one circled, man. They have to.
Right, and they've got to find ways to qualify up front. That's been kind of the big. I think that's the big issue is offloading for the weekend. The Fords are not bringing speed, and the situation where we have seen them bring speed is when they're qualifying, right? So whatever Eric Almirola has been doing qualifying, because he seems to have qualifying speed here and there, that's all going to the 4 now. I like that. I like that call. I was trying to remember because you had said Byron ran away with it, and he did at the end. But if I vaguely remember, that was the race. The Goodyear 400 was the race that Byron was a couple laps down, or almost a lap down, or spun early in that race. And this was actually a race that...
he only led 7 laps.
Right. And it ended up being, like I say here, Harrison Burton finished in the top 6. Justin Haley was up there. Gilliland finished 11th. Buescher was in the top 10. There are a lot of guys that maybe had better days than they should have. Preece and Briscoe finished in the teens. That's new. Sorry, you didn't deserve that. So the guy that dominated this race... You think about there's 3 races this year, 3 to 4 that were basically the 19 and the 1 run each other down. You got Dover, you got Gateway. I feel like there was one more where just the one in the 19. It just seems like they've got speed, and this was actually a race that was like that. Truex led 140 something, 145 laps at this race, and he got that's what it was. It was the 19 and the 1. Got wrecked out of this one, but Ross Chastain, I remember he being one of the only guys who could pass at the track. He actually passed for the lead. He had 93 laps led. So I'm thinking between one of those guys, and I'm going to go with the guy leading the points or tied for the lead of points. I'm going to go with Truex. I think he can dominate, but if they bring the same setup, that'll be interesting, especially if Ross, who I mentioned was cold earlier, can bring that speed and win the first race. That's a statement win. I fully believe that the reason Logano won the championship last year was because when he got to the round of 8 and he won at Vegas, he had 3 weeks to think about Phoenix.
Yep.
And knowing that you've got all that time to think about Phoenix changes things immensely. And they just had it prepped, whereas everybody else was worried about Homestead or the Martinsville setup. So the earlier you can lock yourself into the championship round, the better, the quicker you can move on to the other rounds. If you win Darlington, you don't have to worry about Kansas and Bristol. You like to finish nicely, but now you're thinking about Texas and the Roval because you know Talladega is going to be a coin flip. So like, all right, let's get in the tunnel for Texas. Who gives a shit? We'll just show up at Kansas with the backup car. I don't care.
Right
We
around the
won.
back.
Right. So it's a very interesting dynamic that we have in this sport versus others where playoffs is like one game and then the next game is the next play. No, you could have 2 races essentially where all you have to do is show up and
they're
finish.
not all equal. They're not all equal. Right. Yeah.
So very interesting in that regard. And then before we end the pod, how about this? Let's call your shot. The champion this year. We'll go the same order. Who's your champion this year? And your quick blurb on why.
Oh boy! All right. I mean,
first race.
I don't think anybody is really like. I mean, I like where Denny sits right now, and I think that if there was like, aside from that 2020 season when it was Hamlin and Harvick all year back and forth, this is one of the best. This is probably the best that I've felt about Denny Hamlin moving into the playoffs that I have, at least since then, and arguably even more so than at that point. So I think that probably means I'm going to be sorely disappointed at some point in the middle of this playoff run, but I'm going to put it out there and try and put some good energy out there and predict Denny Hamlin finally gets that ring.
Okay, the 11 car, no shot.
It's all heart right here. I'm not throwing out a lot of numbers and stuff like that. I'm just speaking from the heart on this one.
What you thinking there?
I know I'm slamming it today, but Chris Buescher, man, like I somehow knew you were going to ask this question today. Like I'm like, okay, who's like we're here in the playoffs now. Who's going to win it? I'm like,
he's red hot. How do you not take the guy? He's
the number one guy in the sport over the last month and a half is Chris Buescher. Like it's not up for debate. He's won half of the races.
Right.
Like when you look at the tracks that we have left, the way that it lays out, the fact that his teammate is Brad Kay, super experienced guy in the playoffs with him. It's a 2-car team. They got plenty of resources. Roush, Fenway, Keselowski is not hurting for funds. They're fine. To me, it's make it to the Final Four. If Buescher makes it to the Final Four and goes to Phoenix in a Ford, it's over. Like he's gonna win. There's no that's to me, that's it. If he can make it to the 4 and he's already starting the playoffs in a good spot to accomplish that, he will win a championship. Get to Phoenix and you will win a championship.
I'm going to go with the bow tie because you guys have each taken up the other manufacturers.
Yeah, go figure.
I'm going to go with the 5. I think that if it came down between the 5 and the 24, while William did end up winning Watkins Glen, I don't see that as a race, or I just don't see that as a team that's really got it together right now. He even self-admitted that they've been struggling to put together results. I think that the 5 car having already won a championship, a lot of experience on that team, and the best driver in the sport behind the wheel. I think that they're going to figure some stuff out. Again, like Jeff mentioned, 3rd in laps led, leads in top 10s. Doesn't have quite wins that you're used to seeing with the 5 car, but I think that Kyle Larson is the best bow tie, the best chance that Chevy has at winning a championship this year. So that is my prediction.
One of the most consistent drivers throughout the year, whether the wins have been there or not.
Right.
It's pretty much what it is. I mean, I'm shocked. I thought you were really going to go with Stenhouse Jr. when you were picking.
Yeah, I'm a big Stenhouse guy.
One more thing on my Buescher thing. It's dependent on can he handle the pressure.
Right.
Because it's not accustomed to this, I don't think. But yeah, I can see Larson. I think any of the 3 of those guys are completely viable shots. The fact that none of us took Truex is a little surprising, I think.
That's the thing is I was sitting here bouncing back and forth and I'm like, do I go with the heart or do I go with what feels like the numbers pick? You know, like if it wasn't, I just want to see Denny get it. I want to see him get that ring. But, there's also a part of me that feels like if there's another Toyota that stands the best chance just looking at anything else, Marty would probably be that guy. Because you're also talking about somebody who has that pressure experience and has come through. So, there's something with that. But, yeah, I'm a little surprised at that too. I had figured one of you guys was going to take Truex, pretty sure.
Yeah, I mean it's hard not to take the favorite, guy like that, and I really only didn't take him because I felt Chevy deserved some kind of representation in this debate. But yeah, if I had to put my money on, somebody else winning, Truex is right there, very very hot, all over the place.
Yeah.
I mean, just good at all kinds of tracks and has been there. Interesting enough, though, he's never won a championship in the 19. It's always crazy to me that he won that with a one-car team, the 78. Gonna be just a crazy NASCAR history stat in 30, 40 years.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think with that, that's going to wrap it up for us as we lead into the playoffs. I hope everybody's going to excited to tune into this one as I am. Everybody, please make sure you check us out on YouTube, Spotify, and iHeartRadio under the name Intentional Wreck. Like, share, subscribe, tell all your friends. Please find us on Twitter and follow us at intwreckpod. That's at INTWRECKPOD. Find us, follow us, let's talk racing, and enjoy the playoffs, everybody.
Can take what you want from me.